Hey everybody, good morning. Charles Calhoun, aka the Shade Tree Pro. I know you all seen the videos that I've done at my tennis court. I love coming to my tennis court here and shooting these videos. Um, Today, before I head out to the golf course later, today I'm going to show you, or I'm going to do this video, and I'm going to talk about the pivot. And I know that you hear people all the time, is there one pivot or two pivot? Well, if you all seen my Monday video where I talked about, the 5 phases. Well, I use those 5 phases, like I said, to break the body down using more or less like block psychology to basically find and fix faults. And so one of the biggest things I was able to understand was this. Is there one pivot or is there two pivot? Well, actually, there's one pivot that's basically done with two legs. And then also there is two pivots, and it's really based on where your swing starts. And I'm gonna give you an example of what I mean by that. If you're one of those who like to come from the ground up, and like I told many people before, if you want to come from the ground up, then you come from the ground up. If you want to come top down, you come top down. All I'm doing, like Coca-Cola had Pepsi, I'm presenting an option that you choose in a sense. But the one thing you have to understand, and I'm definitely going to show you here today, is that the movements in themselves are different. So when most people who are coming up from the ground, let me lay this over here. Most people who are coming up, starting from the ground up, their hips become pretty much one dimensional. In other words, their hips are basically just rotating, and what happens is that the hips rotate first, and then you have to make the actions with the arms to come down, to set them up, whatever you do to try to get down to the ball. And it does lead to many compensations that you've learned throughout the years. A lot of stuff that they talk about fixing faults come from the actions that we do with our lower body. And main thing, as I talked about, if this moves in, then this is going to come out. But also with that, in that pivot, is that if this comes around, then it's automatically triggering the body in itself, or the swinging of the arms to come around as well. And that is more what I call more a horizontal type of pivot. Now, I know many of you all, when you were struggling with your swing or something, and maybe one of your teachers made you put your feet together like this, and then all of a sudden you start hitting balls, and you start hitting them really good, and then all of a sudden you start moving out like this, boom, you're still okay to hit them. And then when you get out to your normal stance, then all of a sudden now you're hitting them fat, you're hitting them all over the place, and you're wondering yourself why. Then you go back to this. Well, because when you start from the ground up, if I was going to jump up in the air, my feet probably going to come together. And what that is bringing them together. That's creating what I consider to be, because I don't think of the pivot so much as the legs, as just as more or less, as you all know, my middle body. I just think the pivot is more that it goes around the body, just like this. It goes around the body as one single pivot around the body. And it makes it easier for you when you swing around the body when your feet are closer together. Well, when your feet are apart like this, that turns into more of a shifting action, because if I get wider here and I try to turn, then I'm going to fall back here, because, like I said, my body is going to want to shift from one side to the other. So all of you all that's doing from the ground up, pay attention to the fact is that you have to focus on creating or making the body feel like one simple pivot point. Whether your feet are, if you get wide together, you got to figure out a way to get the pivot point. You'll figure that out. Well, because I teach top down, my philosophy is that to teach top down, the movement of the body with top down is 2 pivot points. And those pivot points really is a shift. And that's why when I get to the top of the golf swing and I go top down, what happens is that my swing is more vertical, it's more in front of me, so I don't really need so much as this rotation as much as I need the shifting. So exactly, so when I get up to the top of the swing, because the reason for we striking or bringing the club down is to strike the ball that's in front of us. Now, all of a sudden now, when I drop the club down from the top, my body naturally shifts because the swinging or this vertical swinging of the arm has pretty much taken over the first initial action of movement, has taken over. So now my lower body can't come out in a sense because the dropping of the arms has pretty much blocked it into place. So now I can get to the ball. So my lower body actually wants to shift first, strike, and then it goes around. Which eventually, like I say, just because the swinging of the arm is going to bring it around, but the swinging of the arm is more on a vertical instead of a horizontal, in essence. So the way I've come to understand it is that when you're using ground up, you have to focus on the fact that you are basically making a single pivot because the lower body is coming out, the hips are rotating out, and the arms are going to want to follow the rotation of the hips if they start first. If you're using top down, you have to understand is that the dropping of the arms is going to create a vertical action of swinging in front of you, and the hips are now, because this went first, now all of a sudden the hips will stay in place, and they want to follow exactly what the arms are doing. So when you drop, boom, now that's one pivot, two pivot. You see what I mean? You're constantly shifting. The other one, you can go from outside the foot to inside the foot. Remember, that's still two pivot for those people who may have one leg, some of those adaptive golfers. In a sense, it's still two pivots because it makes you go sideways. And that's exactly what you're trying to do when you make that vertical drop. Vertical drop, that's how Mo Norman said. He said vertical drop, horizontal tug. Well, that's two pivots, based on the way that I see it. So there is a difference between the pivots that you use based on the philosophy that you use. So once again, if you come from the ground up, your hips are going to rotate. If you come from the top down, your hips are going to shift. One is a single pivot. The other one in itself is a double pivot because you got to go from rather outside the foot to inside the foot or from foot to foot. It is a double pivot. So people, look at that, think about that, and give that a try. See how it works in coordination with the way that you swing the golf club. And once again, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. I mean, as I said before, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscription button. And don't forget to tell all your friends about what Shade Tree Pro is doing. And and if you're improving, send me a message and tell me what's going on with your game. Like I said, I could take my 5 phases and it's pretty much nothing I can't fix in a golf swing. Simple fact is because, as I said, and you all seeing in this video where I'm talking about the different understandings of the pivot, is that, I know how to break it down because it's just like when I was in the military, I was a mechanic in the military and you have to break it down piece by piece. And there's a reason that the movements that we make in our body do exactly what they need to do. I mean, it's no miracle of how the body is moving in a sense. It's defined like that. Remember this coming Monday, I'm gonna break down the joints and show you how the 6 joints of each side, how I define them by numbers. And that'll be something interesting. It'll help you get a better understanding of how you move in your body and the reasons why. And it's just good stuff. And we're gonna continue down this road. And once again, Charles Calhoun, aka the Shade Tree Pro, give this video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and always good golfing.